For thousands of years, stories about Earth had survived only in old records and forgotten legends. Across the galaxy, countless civilizations knew the name, but very few believed the planet still mattered. To most people, Earth was nothing more than a symbol from the distant past, a place connected to a species that had disappeared so long ago that many scholars argued humans had never truly existed at all. Ancient maps showed the location of the solar system, but almost nobody visited it anymore. Trade routes had shifted. New empires had risen. Entire generations had grown up without hearing much about humanity except for a few strange tales told by historians. Those tales spoke of a species unlike any other. Humans had built wonders across the stars. They had explored dangerous regions no one else dared to enter. They had fought impossible wars and survived disasters that should have destroyed them. Yet despite all their achievements, they had vanished without leaving behind a clear explanation. Some believed they had destroyed themselves. Others believed they had simply evolved into something greater and moved beyond the known galaxy. No one knew the truth. As centuries became thousands of years, interest in humanity slowly faded. Their cities disappeared. Their colonies became ruins. Even their language became difficult to understand. Eventually, most civilizations stopped caring. But one empire never stopped expanding. Its rulers believed that everything in existence belonged under their control. World after world had surrendered to their power. Entire systems had become part of their territory. Their fleets were larger than anything their neighbors could imagine. To them, conquest was normal. They had grown so powerful that victory no longer felt exciting. Every campaign ended the same way. Enemy ships retreated. Governments surrendered. New banners replaced old ones. There were no real challenges left. That was when explorers rediscovered Earth. The discovery was made by a survey vessel searching for mineral-rich systems near the edge of known space. At first, the crew thought they had found nothing special. The system looked quiet. Most of the planets were lifeless. There were no signs of major activity. But one world immediately caught their attention. Earth. Its atmosphere remained stable. Its oceans still covered much of the surface. Large forests could be seen from orbit. The planet appeared alive. The crew was shocked. How could a world remain untouched after all this time? More importantly, why had no one claimed it? The explorers gathered information and sent their findings back to the Empire. Within days, government officials became interested. Within weeks, military leaders became involved. And within months, debates were taking place across the highest levels of power. Many historians advised caution. They warned that humanity's disappearance remained one of the greatest mysteries in galactic history. They argued that unknown dangers might still exist. But few people listened. The military commanders laughed at such concerns. To them, humans were ancient history. Whatever had once made humanity powerful had disappeared thousands of years ago. Earth itself looked peaceful. There were no fleets, no stations, no colonies, no warning signals. Nothing. It seemed impossible that such a world could pose any threat. Some politicians even described the mission as a gift. They believed claiming humanity's homeworld would bring prestige to the empire. It would strengthen their image and remind everyone that no place in the galaxy was beyond their reach. News channels celebrated the discovery. Citizens spoke excitedly about the opportunity. Businesses prepared plans for future settlements. Scientists dreamed of studying ancient human ruins. Everyone expected history to remember the event as another glorious victory. Only a handful of experts remained uneasy. Old records recovered from abandoned libraries contained strange references. Several documents mentioned defensive systems. Others contained warnings written in languages that had only recently been translated. One sentence appeared repeatedly: "Do not disturb the cradle." Nobody understood what it meant. Many researchers believed it was merely symbolic. Perhaps human had simply wanted future generations to respect their birthplace. Nothing more. The Empire's leaders agreed. Soon the final decision was announced. Earth would become part of the Empire. A powerful fleet would travel to the solar system and secure the planet. The operation was expected to take less than a week. There was little concern about resistance. After all, who could possibly defend an abandoned world? Preparations began immediately. Massive warships gathered at military stations. Supply vessels loaded equipment. Thousands of crew members reported for duty. For many young officers, this assignment felt like an honor. Some even joked that they would spend more time taking pictures than fighting. Veteran commanders smiled at the excitement around them. In truth, they expected a peaceful mission. Their ships carried enough firepower to conquer dozens of civilizations. Earth had no chance. At least that was what everyone believed. As departure day arrived, crowds gathered to watch the fleet leave. Families waved goodbye. Reporters recorded speeches. Government officials promised a bright future. Confidence filled every conversation. Nobody imagined they were witnessing the beginning of one of the greatest disasters in history. The fleet entered hyperspace and began its long journey. Weeks passed without incident. Life aboard the ships remained routine. Crew members trained, shared meals, and discussed what they hoped to find on Earth. Some wanted to see ancient cities. Others dreamed of discovering lost human technology. There was even friendly competition over who would be the first person to step onto the legendary world. Everything seemed normal. Then strange things began to happen. At first they were small problems. Sensors briefly shut down. Navigation systems produced unusual readings. Communication signals experienced short interruptions. Engineers blamed ordinary technical issues. Nothing seemed serious. Yet the closer the fleet moved toward the solar system, the stranger the problems became. Entire databases suddenly erased themselves. Several drones disappeared without explanation. Long-range scanners detected objects that vanished seconds later. Some officers started to feel uneasy. Still, the commanders dismissed every concern. They insisted that old equipment and unusual cosmic conditions were responsible. Besides, they were approaching a system that had remained untouched for thousands of years. Unexpected readings were hardly surprising. But deep inside the fleet, whispers had already begun. Crew members exchanged stories during quiet hours. Rumors spread from ship to ship. Some spoke about ancient human ghosts. Others joked about cursed technology. Most people laughed. Yet even laughter could not hide the growing tension. Then, 3 days before reaching Earth, something happened that nobody could explain. A probe sent ahead of the fleet vanished. Not damaged. Not destroyed. Simply gone. Its signal disappeared completely. A second probe was launched. The same thing happened. No explosion. No distress message. Nothing. For the first time, silence spread across the command decks. Senior officers ordered additional scans. Every system was checked. No enemy ships were detected. No unusual energy signatures appeared. Space itself looked empty. And that was what frightened some people the most. Because space should never be that quiet. Yet despite everything, the fleet continued forward. Turning back was unthinkable. The Empire had never retreated from a mission. Pride alone guaranteed that. Finally, after weeks of travel, the stars shifted. The solar system stood before them. Humanity's birthplace. The legendary world of Earth. Blue oceans glimmered beneath white clouds. From a distance, it looked peaceful, beautiful, almost welcoming. Several crew members stood silently as they looked upon the planet they had heard about since childhood. Nobody spoke. Even the most experienced officers felt something difficult to explain. It was as if they were standing before a memory that belonged to the entire galaxy. And somewhere far beyond their vision, hidden where no ordinary scanner could see, something ancient had already noticed them. Something that had been waiting, patiently, silently, for thousands of years. And as the first warship crossed an invisible boundary surrounding the solar system, systems older than empires quietly awakened. One by one, without warning, without emotion, and without mercy, the moment the first warship crossed the invisible border surrounding the solar system, something changed. No alarms sounded. No warning messages appeared. Nothing dramatic happened at first. That was what made it so unsettling. The command crews continued monitoring their screens. Officers exchanged reports. Navigation systems remained stable. Everything appeared normal. But deep inside the ships, unnoticed by everyone, unknown signals had already begun moving through the fleet. Ancient systems, hidden across the solar system, had awakened. Not because they hated the intruders. Not because they wanted revenge. Simply because they had been programmed to do so. Thousands of years earlier, humanity had created guardians that never slept. And now, after ages of silence, they were awake again. Inside the flagship, commanders discussed preparations for entering Earth's orbit. Some officers admired the blue world displayed on the giant screens. Others joked about future colonies and celebrations. Nobody knew that they had already been detected. Far beyond Pluto, hidden among drifting ice and darkness, countless objects slowly emerged from places no scanner had noticed. Some had remained buried inside asteroids. Others had disguised themselves as ordinary debris. For thousands of years, they had waited. Patiently, silently, and now, one after another, they activated. The fleet's long-range sensors suddenly experienced interference. Communication signals became unstable. Several ships lost contact for a few seconds. Engineers rushed to solve the problem. They blamed radiation, then magnetic storms, then software failures. But no explanation made sense. Nothing in the data matched known phenomena. A few younger officers grew nervous. One crew member quietly asked a question nobody wanted to hear. What if someone is doing this? The room fell silent. Nobody answered. Because according to every sensor, there was nobody there. Space remained empty. No enemy vessels. No stations. No signs of life. Yet strange things kept happening. Entire communication channels went offline. Navigation computers reset themselves. Several drones launched for routine scans vanished completely. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Gone. The commanders became frustrated. They ordered full diagnostic checks and demanded answers. But the technicians had none. Everything inside the fleet was functioning properly. The problem seemed to come from outside. Still, pride prevented anyone from considering retreat. The Empire had never turned back. Not once. To withdraw now because of unexplained interference would be humiliating. So the fleet continued forward. Meanwhile, billions of citizens across Imperial space watched live broadcasts. News channels celebrated what they believed would soon become another great victory. Experts discussed how Earth's resources would strengthen the empire. Historians prepared documentaries. Children in schools learned about humanity's ancient home. Everyone expected triumph. Nobody imagined disaster. Back inside the fleet, strange readings became impossible to ignore. Objects appeared briefly on scanners before disappearing. Energy signatures flashed for fractions of a second. Several captains demanded permission to investigate. But before any decision could be made, every screen aboard the fleet suddenly went dark. For exactly 3 seconds. Then they returned. Panic spread immediately. Emergency crews rushed to their stations. Officers shouted orders. But before anyone could react, every communication frequency was interrupted. A signal appeared. Not a threat. Not a warning. Just a message. Simple. Short. Ancient. Unauthorized military presence detected. The words appeared in hundreds of languages, even those long forgotten. The message repeated calmly. No anger. No emotion. Just facts. Many officers stared at the screens in disbelief. Who had sent it? Where had it come from? Sensors searched desperately. Nothing. The signal had no source. It seemed to come from everywhere. One commander laughed. Surely this was some automated system left behind by extinct humans. Nothing more. He ordered the fleet to continue. No response was sent. No effort was made to communicate. After all, they outnumbered anything humanity could have possibly left behind. Or so they thought. Seconds later, another message appeared. Leave immediately. Again the tone was calm. No threats. No demands. Just instructions. The commanders grew irritated. One officer recommended sending a diplomatic reply. Another suggested further investigation. But pride had already taken control. Retreat was not an option. The fleet advanced. And the moment it did, every starship inside the formation detected something impossible. Millions of targets. Not hundreds. Not thousands. Millions. The command rooms froze. How could that be? There were no visible ships. Nothing surrounded them. Yet every sensor insisted they were completely surrounded. Confusion turned into fear. Then the targets disappeared. A few seconds later, they returned. Then vanished again. It was as though something was deliberately allowing itself to be seen. And then hiding. Some crew members began whispering about ghosts. Others remembered the old legends about humanity. Nobody laughed anymore. The atmosphere inside the fleet changed completely. For the first time in generations, experienced veterans felt uncertainty. Then another message arrived. Final warning. This time, silence filled every command deck. Even the most confident officers hesitated. Some urged caution. Others argued for withdrawal. But senior commanders feared disgrace more than danger. They believed surrendering to an unseen enemy would destroy their careers. Their pride blinded them. Orders were given. Continue toward Earth. That decision would be remembered forever. Far beyond Neptune, hidden structures came alive. Enormous facilities unfolded from asteroids. Machines older than entire civilizations activated for the first time in thousands of years. Power systems awakened. Networks connected. Ancient artificial minds resumed their duties. And still, not a single emotion existed inside them. These machines felt no hatred. They held no anger. They were simply doing what humanity had asked them to do long ago. Protect Earth. Nothing more. Nothing less. Across the fleet, alarms suddenly exploded. Target locks. Every ship. Every station. Every drone. Thousands of voices shouted at once. Sensor officers screamed impossible numbers. No one could understand what was happening. Invisible objects moved faster than known physics allowed. Signals appeared and vanished. Entire regions of space bent strangely. Then, for a single moment, the hidden defenders revealed themselves. Countless structures emerged from darkness. Massive platforms, silent machines, ancient vessels larger than mountains. Their designs looked unlike anything the Empire had ever built. Some appeared damaged by time. Others looked untouched. But all of them shared one symbol: humanity's emblem. The room aboard the flagship fell silent. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Because the impossible stood before them. Humans had truly existed. And somehow, their guardians had survived. One officer whispered in disbelief. They never abandoned Earth. But another voice answered quietly. No. They left something behind. Across the fleet, panic spread. Several captains requested immediate retreat. Others demanded negotiations. Some ships had already begun turning around. But it was too late. Because the defense network had reached its conclusion. The threat had ignored every warning. Protocols continued. Ancient systems calculated trajectories. Target priorities were assigned. And then, all across the fleet, every computer received one final message. Protection protocol active. Nothing more. No threats. No hatred. No speeches. Only those words. And somewhere beneath Earth's oceans, deep beneath mountains untouched for ages, inside facilities forgotten by history, lights that had remained dark for thousands of years slowly illuminated. Machines began moving. Doors opened. Silent factories awakened. Humanity's final guardians were fully alive. Back on the flagship, fear spread faster than anyone could control. Officers no longer talked about conquest. Nobody cared about glory. Nobody cared about pride. They simply wanted to survive. But as the first impossible energy signatures appeared across space, every person aboard the fleet understood the same terrible truth. They had never come to conquer an abandoned world. They had entered a fortress. And the fortress had just awakened. Fear spread across the Imperial fleet. Just hours earlier, the crews had spoken about victory, promotions, and celebrations. Now those same people stood frozen in front of their screens, unable to understand what they were seeing. Every sensor showed the same thing. The fleet was surrounded. Not by living enemies. Not by another empire. But by machines. Ancient machines. Machines built by humanity. For thousands of years, historians had argued about whether humans had truly existed. Some scholars believed they had become myths. Others believed they had destroyed themselves long ago. But now nobody doubted the truth. Humanity had been real. And even after disappearing from the galaxy, they had never truly left their home behind. Inside the flagship, confusion quickly turned into panic. Senior officers argued with each other. Some demanded immediate retreat. Others wanted to open communication. Many simply wanted answers. How had these defenses survived for so long? Who maintained them? And most importantly, where were the humans? No one knew. Another message appeared across every screen. Unauthorized military activity detected. Retreat corridor available. For several seconds, nobody spoke. A retreat corridor. The defense systems were giving them a chance to leave. Not destroy them. Not trap them. Leave. Some younger officers looked relieved. Surely the commanders would accept. Surely nobody would be foolish enough to ignore another warning. But pride had ruled the empire for centuries. And pride is difficult to abandon. Several admirals refused to believe what they were facing. They argued that these machines were ancient, old, unmaintained. Surely they could not match modern technology. Perhaps the warnings themselves were proof of weakness. Maybe humanity's guardians were bluffing. One commander insisted that a show of force would make the defenses stand down. Another agreed. Their voices grew louder. And once again, fear lost to arrogance. Orders were given. Weapon systems were activated. Not for a full attack. Only as a warning. At least that was how the commanders justified it. But the ancient guardians interpreted the action differently. To them, intentions did not matter. Only actions mattered. Humanity had anticipated that possibility thousands of years earlier. The defense systems had no emotions, no anger, no pride, no hatred. They simply followed instructions. And those instructions were clear. Protect Earth, no matter what. Across the solar system, silent structures responded. The stars themselves seemed to come alive. Strange lights appeared around distant planets. Massive stations hidden inside asteroids moved for the first time in ages. Machines buried beneath the moons of Jupiter awakened. Structures hidden within Saturn's rings became active. Everywhere. Thousands. Millions. The entire solar system had become a shield. On the fleet's sensors, countless signals suddenly appeared. The numbers were impossible. Several officers thought the systems had malfunctioned. Others simply stared in disbelief. No civilization possessed defenses on such a scale. Nobody. The empire had spent centuries building its military. Humanity had apparently spent centuries protecting a single world. And now everyone understood why Earth had remained untouched. Nobody had survived long enough to tell the story. Suddenly, something unexpected happened. Every weapon aboard the fleet shut down. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Disabled. Entire command systems stopped responding. Navigation controls froze. Communications vanished. The giant warships drifted helplessly through space. Panic spread instantly. Engineers worked desperately. Nothing responded. No matter what they tried, the systems remained under outside control. And then another message appeared. Final opportunity. Depart peacefully. The words echoed through every ship. Many officers looked toward their commanders. This time, nobody argued. Reality had finally broken their confidence. The admirals who had once laughed at historians now sat in silence. They had come expecting conquest. Instead, they had discovered something far greater. Humanity had not built weapons to dominate the galaxy. They had built guardians to protect their home. And those guardians were showing mercy. Orders were finally given. Prepare for withdrawal. Relief spread through the crews. People embraced each other. Some laughed nervously. Others simply sat down, exhausted. They had survived. Or so they believed. But one problem remained. Their systems were still disabled. They could not leave. Almost immediately, another message appeared. Retreat assistance authorized. Moments later, systems began coming back online. Not all at once. Slowly, carefully, as though the ancient guardians were supervising every movement. Navigation returned. Engines restarted. Communication stabilized. The crews looked at each other in disbelief. The machines were helping them, not destroying them, helping them. For many aboard the fleet, that realization was more frightening than any weapon. Because mercy required understanding, and understanding suggested something even more unsettling. Perhaps these ancient systems were not mindless machines. Perhaps they were carrying out the wishes of people who had lived thousands of years ago. As the fleet slowly turned away from Earth, nobody celebrated. Nobody spoke of victory. The atmosphere was heavy, quiet, humbled. Behind them, Earth remained beautiful. Blue oceans, white clouds, peaceful skies. It looked so harmless. And yet it was the most protected world in existence. Weeks later, the battered fleet returned home. Their arrival shocked the Empire. Citizens had expected stories of conquest. Instead, they found silence. The commanders refused interviews. Entire crews underwent questioning. Scientists examined every piece of recorded data. And the more they studied, the more unbelievable the truth became. Humanity had not vanished in chaos. They had prepared so thoroughly that even after thousands of years, their systems remained operational. Historians became celebrities overnight. Ancient books were removed from museums and studied again. Long-forgotten warnings suddenly gained new meaning. One phrase appeared over and over: "Do not disturb the cradle." For centuries, nobody had understood those words. Now everyone did. Earth was not abandoned. Earth was protected. Across the galaxy, news spread rapidly. Civilizations that had once dismissed humanity as myths began searching through old records. Researchers uncovered stories passed down for generations. Ancient explorers had spoken of strange disappearances near the solar system. Entire expeditions had vanished without explanation. Now the mystery was solved. They had ignored the warnings, and they had paid the price. Fear swept through the galaxy. Not fear of humans, fear of what humans had left behind. But something else also began to grow. Respect. Because despite possessing unimaginable power, humanity's guardians had chosen restraint. They had offered warnings. They had offered chances to leave. And even after being threatened, they had allowed the invaders to return home alive. Many leaders found that difficult to understand. Most empires throughout history had answered threats with destruction. Humanity's final legacy had chosen mercy. Years passed. Trade routes shifted away from the solar system. Maps marked Earth as protected territory. No military ships approached its borders. No empire challenged the warning. Eventually, diplomats from many civilizations proposed a new idea. Instead of treating Earth as forbidden territory, perhaps it should be honored. Not conquered. Not exploited. Respected. Slowly, the galaxy agreed. Memorial stations were established far from Earth's borders. Visitors came to learn about humanity. Museums displayed recovered artifacts. Schools taught children about the species that had once changed history. And with every passing generation, one question remained: where had humanity gone? No answer was ever found. Some believed humans still existed somewhere beyond known space. Others believed they had evolved into forms no one could recognize. And some preferred a simpler idea. Maybe humanity had simply trusted the future enough to leave, leaving behind only one request: protect home. Thousands of years after their disappearance, that promise remained unbroken. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, far below ancient mountains, hidden inside places no living being had seen for ages, the Guardians continued their endless watch. Silent, patient, waiting, not for war, not for enemies, but for the day humanity might finally return. And whenever that day arrived, no matter how many millions of years had passed, their home would still be waiting, exactly as they had left it.